Get your action figures at Big Bad Toy Store at the link in the description.
Kaiju, turtles, Dragon Ball, and more. It's Steven's Toy Reviews.
Hello there, collectors. It's going to be Steven here, and I am bringing you a Super 7 Godzilla review. It is going to be of the Toho Ultimates Super 7 Godzilla Thirsty for Blood SDCC exclusive. I'm just going to simply say this as the Dark Horse Godzilla tribute, and oh boy, this is really cool. I really like this figure. This was, when I went to SDCC, the only one that I actually bought at the con. I did get other exclusives. I bought them online because that's a whole other discussion. It really wasn't feasible to buy stuff and send them back, but like I said, that was a whole other discussion. Anyway, this figure is really nice because it's actually better than the standard retail release of Wave 1 Godzilla, and Arthur Adams actually gave his seal of approval. We'll talk about that, so let's take a look to see whether or not it's going to be worth adding into your collection. All right, the review starts. Normally, I don't really talk about the boxes or the packaging for a review because it's a box. I mean, realistically speaking, if a box gets destroyed in transit, yeah, it's pretty bad and it's not great, but it's a box. What are you going to do? For this one, however, the slipcover is immediately a tribute to the issue of the Dark Horse comic run, wherein Godzilla is thirsty for blood. With that being said, you take the slipcover off, and that style still continues, and it's really cool. I actually had mine signed by Art Adams at the con, and interestingly enough, he even said it was awesome. Went over to Super 7's designer, who worked on this, who made this happen, and there's a whole other neat story. I don't know if I have the ability to tell it, but it's cool. I know for a fact that Art Adams said that he liked this because I heard those words come out of his mouth. So long story short, I mean, the guy who did the comic cover said that he likes this. So, I mean, what more of a seal of approval than you need from that? But let's go ahead and take a look at the figure. Here's a 360 spin view. And honestly, I think it looks great. There's a little bit of a shiny plastic quality to it, which is mostly forgivable considering that dry brushing though. Yeah, it looks very good. Now, some folks have said that blood is way too much on the mouth, but honestly, I think it's fine. I really don't think it's that big of an issue, especially when we look up close and personal at it. And honestly, the dry brushing is fantastic. I'm really head over heels for how this figure looks. I think that the detail is fantastic. I think the eye decals are great, some of the best that I've seen. I think the left eye, Godzilla's left, is a little bit wonky, even with that little bright starburst, whatever you want to call it, effect on the eyes. I think even still, it's a little bit off, but nevertheless, it looks good. I say nevertheless too much, but I mean, honestly, I'm giving it nothing but praise. I do have two particular issues. One of the head sculpts on mine, on his lips, there's a little bit of a green streak, which, that's minor. But the overall legitimate issue is that the dorsal plates on this guy don't match the cover. But with that being said, that's maybe a stylistic choice. That's okay if that's what they were going for, but to be 100% comic accurate, it's not. That's okay though, because the end result is very good. That's about it. I suppose you could make the argument that the shading on the dorsal plates could be better, but nevertheless, it's still fine. Articulation time. And realistically speaking, before we begin, this is our pin jar. And I feel a little bit like Clint Eastwood here because we're going to be talking about something that doesn't really speak, kind of like the chair. But the point being is that we're going to need a lot of those. I'm not even going to say put a pin in it. We're going to come back because just assume I'm going to be doing that a whole lot. In this section, more so particular, that's going to carry on throughout the remainder of this review. What am I talking about? Let's go ahead and start. For the articulation, as you know, we go head to toe, and the first thing that we're going to talk about is there's no jaw hinge, but we do have the head, which plugs in on a ball joint, which does actually have a good range of movement. It's not tight, it's not super duper loose, it's just fluid and easy to move, which is good. So just with that, he can look up about that far and look down about that far. The ball joint here, as you can see where the neck plugs in, doesn't really work too well for anything other than left and right movement, which is fine. That works just well enough. For the shoulders, I had different joint tolerances for them both, but first and foremost, they do hinge up. So as you can see there, a little bit different. So Godzilla can T-pose with no issues, but notice more so particularly here when you go to move. See how they kind of drop down a little bit? That's not necessarily, I think, a feature insofar as it is, again, joint tolerances, because they are going to plug in on a swivel, as you can see, and I'm hoping that that's more so just something going on instead of those pins that are plugging in for the swivel pushing down whenever we go to use the hinge, and that being indicative of breakage at some point. Hoping not. So anyway, we do have a swivel for the bicep, which is really good. And then we have single hinge elbows, which this was something that really, I think, I'll go ahead and say it, Super7 dropped the ball on when it came to the promotional stuff, because there were a lot of people in the community who are not really familiar with Super7 who thought there was no elbow hinge. So this was pretty much the default how Godzilla was shown, at least the 89. And as you can see, it kind of looks clean, which is good. However, people thought it wasn't articulated, but that's kind of just how Super7 does things. Then we do have a forearm swivel, which is really good, though sometimes it can be a little bit confusing for folks. I think that's just the extent of the range of movement. Just make sure that the cut is there correctly, and you get a mostly 90-degree bend there, which is really good. I think it's more than 90 degrees. But anyway, for all of the hands that we get, they plug in on pegs, so they spin like this, like a swivel, and then they do have hinge movement, which the range for the hinge is pretty much the same throughout. No ball joint here, we just have a swivel, which you can see that the pelvis area here is made of a softer plastic, so it does give, and if you really need to, you can spin Godzilla all the way around, left and right. There you go. Hips. They are on ball joints, so Godzilla can kick out to do the splits that far and can kick forward and back about that far, which is good. Okay, the knees. So for aesthetic reasons, we did not get a jaw hinge. At least that's something that's been noted a lot. We get a single hinge. Okay. And they do spin around where they plug in, though do keep in mind because of the kneecaps, which is very odd, they will grind up against the thighs, that area. For the ankles, we do have hinges, so Godzilla can move his foot down about that far, and then they can kick up about that far, and then we do have swivels, like so, which is really cool. Ankle rockers, neat. For the tail, all right, so for the tail, it does come detached in the box, and in my first look at the figure, I showed that it is somewhat simple to plug in, but you do have to plug it in all the way, so it sits flush like this. Then we do have a multitude of ball joints throughout, but the range is not. Let me show you. It's better to show than describe. So, you know, if you're looking to have Godzilla's tail like wrap all the way around, that's not really going to happen. But it has some solid movement, I would say left and right, though if you really want him to lay his tail down off to the side, you do have to break the illusion of the dorsal plates. So the articulation for the tail is there. It is kind of what it is. However, regarding that tail, as you attach it in, okay, once you do that, it should work just fine. Is that correct? Well, what I will say, and we'll get a more so comprehensive side-by-side, for the normal Godzilla, I've done this correctly, and the tail likes to just seemingly pop out on its own. So keep that in mind. It could be a quality thing. Sometimes it just likes to pop out. So when it comes to articulation, when it is all said and done, does Godzilla move fine? Yes, he does. There's not really a whole lot of a problem there, so to speak, for Godzilla. However, some of the joints here pertaining to the range of movement, it's okay. And I'm not really quite sure as to why, you know, there wasn't like a ball joint incorporated here, or the tail had more of fluid range of movement, considering where we're kind of at for other figures on the market. I understand that this sculpt is ultimately Super7's first crack at a Godzilla design. But when there has been a decade plus of Godzilla action figures on the market, I understand you cannot copy and paste exactly what other companies have done, but you at least have a format for what other collectors have, even maybe some of them in their own collection, and enjoy. Just something to put out there. Moral of the story is, he moves just like some other Super 7 figures you might have. Accessories time, and it's rather short, sweet, and to the point. We get the alternate head sculpt of Godzilla roaring. Okay, they should have added a hinge, but nevertheless. We do get the same hand parts that the standard retail 89 came with, sans the stigmata hand of Biollante piercing it, but we do also get a little guy. That's Art Adams himself. Maybe a few years younger than current day, but even still, it's cool because Godzilla needs a victim, and that is that. Pretty simple and straightforward, not a whole lot, and for $85, yeah, it's a little light on accessories. Some are going to argue because of the size and should be cheaper. I honestly think that I kind of think that maybe there could have been some blood effects. That's kind of all the rage in action figures these days, but yeah, I think it's pretty good. So if you are thinking about some blood effects, Super Action Stuff has the Casket of Cruelty, and their blood effects there are what I used in this video. So if you're thinking about that, check it out. But otherwise, if you need effect parts, buildings, and stuff, you know I got videos to help you out. Here's going to be a size comparison with pretty much all of the current released Godzilla Toho Ultimates that Super 7 has done. Again, this is going to be a repaint of Wave 1, so you know exactly how big this one's going to be if you already have the Wave 1 Godzilla. And here's going to be a side-by-side comparison, which you pretty much already saw a side-by-side comparison in the articulation section. But for those of you who need a bit more of a direct comparison, here you go. And to be honest, kind of like I said, this one is a lot better than the Wave 1 Godzilla. I think this is going to be pretty much the standard default version of Godzilla 89 going forward. So with that, buy now, skip, or wait for a deal. I have to say with this one, it is really interesting that this is going to be something that released at the same time as Wave 1 of Toho Ultimates, and that wave is fine. I think that there needs to be some things that are listened to by the community for Super 7 to really take into consideration before moving forward with the rest of their Toho Ultimates product. But this one is significantly better than any of the Ultimate stuff that I have had from them in some time. I think this is better than pretty much any of the TMNT product that I have, any of the Thundercat stuff that I have had in the past. I think this one knocks pretty much all of that out of the park. That being said, for the price and some of the drawbacks, is this one going to be in top contender for figure of the year? Not necessarily, but I do think that it's really good. On top of that, Super 7 directly does have an accompanying shirt, which is actually pretty solid quality. I've put it through a few washes by this point, and it's still holding up. There's been no degradation of the design on the shirt, so that's something to keep in mind as well. Overall, I think this one solidly gets my seal of approval. Hey collectors, that's going to wrap up the video today, and as always, thanks for watching, commenting, sharing, subbing. It all helps. I always enjoy responding to comments, so be sure to drop one down below and I will respond if I can. I do have supporters on Patreon as well, and each review gets an end card to show who is supporting each month, so here are the end cards. Camera batteries, SD cards, even hard drives. It's not possible without that support, so thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Here's the final end card, so this way you can click subscribe, check out another video, or even check out the social media outlets. You know you want to. Before we end today, as in the description, there may be paid ad space, affiliate links, or product samples that were sent out in this video, so please check out the STR ad disclosure. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch ya in the next video.